Welcome everyone. Thank you for making your time to attend Sandpiper's AI in Calm's virtual Roundtable event, in partnership with PRovoke Media. I am your generative AI host. Now join me to welcome our event moderator, Arun Sudaman, the CEO and Editor-in-Chief of PRovoke Media.
Well, thank you, AI host. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar session that I'm delighted to host in partnership with our friends at Sandpiper. As that audio intro will have made clear, my name is Arun Sudaman, and I think the AI did a pretty good job of pronouncing my name, better than most people. We are here to discuss artificial intelligence in comms, specifically generative AI. There seems to be little question that this is the topic on everyone's minds right now, and it helps explain why, with 380 plus people registered, this might be the most popular webinar I've ever moderated. So thank you, ChatGPT. Since its launch of its third iteration, I believe, in late 2022, we've seen a lot of progress in quite a short space of time, and there is no question that these technologies are going to transform not only how we communicate, but also the nature of that work. The ramifications cover a wide spectrum, from content development and employee productivity right through to pricing structures. But of course, there are many questions that it raises around ethics, around ownership, who owns the final content, should agencies leverage such platforms without the knowledge of their clients? All this and more we will explore in detail. We have some brand new research into how communicators are using generative AI, courtesy of Sandpiper, which we will go through shortly. We also have an excellent panel that is going to discuss some of the research findings. In the interest of time, I'm going to introduce them very quickly because we just had 60 minutes for today's session. But they each bring considerable insight into this area. Carolyn Esser is Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Darktrace, an AI-led cybersecurity firm. Puneet Singh is Communications Director for Asia Pacific and Japan at Cisco. Prashant Saxena leads the Insights function across 6 Asian markets at Icentia. And Mark Johnson is Associate Director at Sandpiper, leading the Technology Communications practice in Asia Pacific. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We're going to run the research findings first. I'll then moderate a panel discussion, and we will end with questions from all of you. Please submit your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box. You can submit them at any time. We will try to get to as many as possible at the end of the session. We do anticipate a number of questions. If we don't get to your question, Sandpiper has committed to answering them after the session. So look out for that. We're going to release more information after the session in the form of research report, video recording, and answers to some of the questions that we don't get to today. So with all that said, I'd like to hand over now to present the findings to Sandpiper Chief Operating Officer, Kelly Johnston.
Thank you, Arun. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So I'm very pleased to be able to share these findings with you. As mentioned by Arun, there will be a full copy of the report made available to everybody next week. So firstly, just to briefly cover the methodology, and the findings of the study are based on a survey of 407 communications professionals based around the world, covering a range of different experience levels, from junior executives to senior management level, and working both in agency and in-house roles. The first finding is that an overwhelming majority of communicators view the advances in AI as an opportunity rather than a risk. This positivity is highest in the Middle East and Africa and Asia Pacific regions. The positivity extends also to the sentiments around job security. So I know there's been a number of reports out about this in recent days, but in our industry, less than 1/3 are worried that advances in AI will replace or reduce their job roles in the future. However, when looking at the breakdown by age group, there are quite considerable variations. So almost double the number of people under 35 are worried about AI replacing their roles in the future, compared with just 21% of those over the age of 45. So when we look to the future, over 2/3 of us forecast that AI will drive major transformation of our industry within the next 3 years. Amid this change, there are concerns that industry leaders, perhaps intimidated by the speed of change, are not acting quickly enough to either capitalize on the opportunities or manage the risks posed by AI. On the flip side, a considerable contingent also are likely to feel that change may be taking place without sufficient consideration, with 53% globally believing that industry leaders aren't taking the risks seriously enough, and 43% say leaders are acting without thinking through the potential implications and consequences. We also see a clear feeling that the blind are leading perhaps the slightly less blind, with less than 4 out of 10 thinking that industry leaders, less than 4 out of 10 industry leaders have a good understanding of AI or generative AI, and this feeling is particularly strong in Asia Pacific. And we're looking at the understanding a little bit deeper in terms of the specific AI terms and technologies. Those at a more junior level actually have a consistently higher level of understanding than those at more senior levels. However, overall, globally, understanding across all levels, from senior managers to junior executives, is still very low. Only 1/3 have a strong understanding of terms, very broad terms such as AI and machine learning, and this falls away considerably to as low as 9% for stable diffusion. In this environment, we see that bridging the knowledge gap is critical. Nearly half of respondents do not believe the company is doing enough to educate them. 7 out of 10 would like more training. And while over half have actually participated in at least some form of training around AI, this has been ad hoc at best, with only 17% and 10% respectively having had any training in identifying and managing fake news or information sources or deepfake content. Despite all these factors, we see that the horse is very much bolted. So 61% of communicators globally say they are already, in fact, using generative AI tools in their daily work, with 1 in 5 of them using these frequently. The highest current overall use, which may not be a huge surprise to many of you, is currently desktop research, creative idea generation, data analysis, social media content, and the writing of articles. But this does also vary quite considerably when you look at different job roles and responsibilities. Use is expected to increase. So in just 6 months, 9 out of 10 communicators believe that they'll be using AI tools at least weekly. As use of these tools continues to grow, most feel that soft skills, such as leadership abilities, strategic advisory, creative thinking, and relationship building will become more important than they are today. These opportunities presented by AI, however, as Arun has mentioned earlier, will come with risks. In one of the more definitive findings, 85% are concerned about increasing legal and ethical risks surrounding generative AI. This is highest in Asia Pacific and North America, and somewhat a bit lower in Europe and the Middle East and North Africa. Despite the rising use and the concerns around risks, the industry is largely unprepared. Only 11% of companies, whether in-house or agency, currently have policies or guidelines in place for using generative AI tools in their communications. 3/4 also believe that this will become an important area of focus in procurement processes. While there is a strong division in the opinions here, 79% overall believe that use of AI tools in communications work should be required in the future to be declared in some way, with the largest group believing that this should really only apply where it is used for sourcing third-party data. Another area that will also require attention in the future is data ownership. 2/3 believe advances in AI pose data ownership risks for the industry, with this feeling strongest in Asia Pacific. And again, we see divided opinions around who should own data. Quite surprisingly, I thought 36% believe that users should retain ownership, and 23% believe that this should be jointly shared. And as you can see from those numbers, there are a range of other quite divided opinions around this. So with many changes on the horizon for all of us, the feelings of positivity also extend to the agency-client relationship. Most believe that AI technologies can positively enhance this and enable agencies to be more efficient. Additionally, there is a view that AI can help level the playing field, perhaps between agencies of different sizes, geographies, skill sets, and language capabilities, among other factors. Lastly, for those agency and in-house teams planning to invest in AI technologies, a growing number of opportunities may exist. So firstly, we see that it can be a differentiator in the competition for talent, which currently appears to be a bit of a missed opportunity by 70%. And also 6 out of 10 believe that there is likely to be a growing body of work around AI-generated reputations. So these are all the findings that we have to share today, conscious of not taking up too much time for the panel discussion, but thank you for listening, and Arun, back to you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Some really fascinating findings there, and it appears that hope springs eternal, as always, I feel, when we are confronted with these new technologies. So let's get going on the panel discussion, and let's start with the first finding. 86% see artificial intelligence as an opportunity versus 14% who see it as a risk. I think all of you will be aware that yesterday the news broke that AI experts and industry executives are calling for a 6-month pause in developing more powerful AI systems, citing potential risks to society. So an interesting juxtaposition. Carolyn, I wanted to start with you, if I could, as someone who's kind of working in AI. Are you as bullish, perhaps, as 86% of our respondents are? And do you see any concerns around trust in AI?
Thank you, Aaron. So yes, we are optimists, absolutely, on the application of AI in the workplace. And very briefly, as you mentioned, Aaron, Darktrace is a cybersecurity firm, but we're a cybersecurity firm that is powered by AI. We are celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. The difference in our AI, and this is important because I'll talk about it later when I answer your question, is that it's not a generative form of AI. So it's not being fed by large language models in the same way ChatGPT or other forms of generative AI are. It is a self-learning AI, which effectively means that it's an empty box when it goes into the organization that we're seeking to protect. And it learns based on the behaviors of that unique organization. And so coming back to the trust point, I think what's been very interesting for our R&D team as they've developed that AI and applied it across the customer base, they very quickly were able to turn or to automate that AI in terms of how it intervened for customers. So, the AI learns really fast. We say, leave it in your environment for 2 weeks to maximize the benefits of that self-learning experience. But really within hours, it can start to detect anomalies in behaviors. And it was relatively simple for that team to create what we called AI Analyst, which was effectively the translation device that turned all of that large data capture into a form of communication that could be acted upon autonomously if you wanted to. What was interesting for our engineers, and it comes back to the trust point, was understandably humans were not always keen to just automatically automate without understanding what sat behind the black box and without building trust over a period of time that the actions that the AI were going to take were accurate, timely, and effective. So we've had to build into our AI journey as we've gone along, and I think this has implications for the wider conversation that we're having about the use of AI in communications, we have to build that trust building mechanism into the way we evolve the product, because the human is inherently untrustworthy, and they wanted to understand and be assured that the actions that the AI was going to take would be effective, as I mentioned. So, we are optimists, but we're also realists. And I think our view is that, and we can talk more about this, our view is that the AI is good for a set task. The AI is, fundamentally a set of algorithms. It's a set of algorithms that are programmed to do a thing. We still believe very much in the power of the human to do the interpretive aspects. But the AI is, it doesn't have to sleep, it doesn't have to eat, it doesn't need to walk the dog, it doesn't need to go out for fresh air. It is there and continuously working, continuously learning. And so we talk about the fact that the AI is there to augment the human. It's not there to replace the human, it's there to augment the human. And it allows the human to do the higher value work that the AI is not yet equipped to be able to do. So I hope that answers the question, Erin.
Well, yes, it does, and it's quite interesting to hear you describe it as optimism tempered by realism. But I wanted to also bring up a couple of other stats and discuss these with the panelists too. So nearly 2/3, 65% forecast major industry transformation within 3 years. But meanwhile, in Asia Pacific, only 25% think there's a strong understanding of AI. And Prashant, I wondered if I could come to you to ask you for your take on those stats, particularly in terms of the pace of transformation.
I think we are underestimating the full impact of generating AI right now. And if you look at the letter that was passed on from Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, etc., that letter directly points to that fact. What that letter says is, let's pause for 6 months, reevaluate what we are doing until GPT-4, and after that, we can do some kind of next model. So what is it trying to say? It's trying to say that, look, things are moving too fast, and a lot of this disruption is going to cut through different industries, different tasks, roles, etc. So I think we are underestimating the impact of generative AI across the industries, including our industry. So that's one. I also think that we are overestimating 3 years. It's going to be much shorter, because if the pause is for 6 months, what happens after 6 months? There have been generative AI experts and also classical thinkers who are saying that within 18 months, we should have artificial general intelligence, which is the next level of generative AI. Essentially, it's not doing large language modeling and text to images or videos. It's actually thinking more emotionally, it's being more interdisciplinary and being more sophisticated in its thinking. So what that means is 3 years is a pretty long time. But there is a huge, huge opportunity in terms of looking at this. It's all about how do we start to use generative AI in our roles in the series of tasks that we do, and also start to prepare ourselves with a good prompt engineering applicable to our roles on how we will be riding wave towards the AGI.
Thank you. Puneet, do you think people are underestimating the short-term impact here, particularly given the apparently low levels of understanding of AI in Asia Pacific, at least?
100% agree with what Prashant said, Arun, and this should give you a reason why. I remember reading a few days ago, Gartner had put out a prediction on AI related technologies last year, and they had said generative AI is about 2 years away. Months down the road, we have some of the most creative modern day thinkers writing collectively saying, don't do anything more because we are already gone way faster than we can comprehend and deal with. But I think the impact, yes, short-term, people are really, really underestimating it. There's a paper that University of Pennsylvania has actually put out, and they've kind of looked at the impact, not of AI on jobs, but specifically generative pre-trained AIs, the GPT kind of technologies on jobs. And amongst the top 5 jobs listed there, impact is public relations, And the way they have quantified the impact is by saying they are looking at the exposure of a job to GPT or GPT-powered technologies as the impact of that technology on reducing the time taken to do a particular task in that job by more than 50%. And according to them, 67% of the job that we all do for a living, we will see the time taken to do those tasks down by more than 50%. Once all of this starts to come to bear. So the impact short term, and Prashant's hit the nail on the head, this is not 3 years away. This is happening as we speak. And it has impact on everything. It has impact on how our roles are viewed. It has an impact on how we view the roles of people within our teams and what we expect them to do. It has an impact on the value that the business sees that comms adds to them. If a generative AI engine can churn a press release out in 30 seconds, do you need someone to do that for you? All you have to do is input data, and it's writing proper text. And then it has an impact on the agency-client relationship, which is all going to exist. But how do all those things evolve? What do those roles entail? What do those partnerships entail? And the scary part, Arun, is, as Kelly pointed out, the level of understanding at the executive level isn't there to fully understand and comprehend so how are they supposed to train those whose jobs are going to get impacted? So it's a very interesting phase. Interesting is an interesting word because you can take it anyway. So that's what I would say. I have another thought on generative and what it actually means for us, but I'll wait for that question to come around.
Sure. Well, you've all, I think, raised many points that we will, I'm sure, discuss, including the client-agency relationship, which I wanted to come to a little later on. But Mark, let me come to you now. I mean, do you from someone working on the agency side, are you seeing that transformation happening right now, as Prashant and Puneet have suggested, as opposed to 3 years away? And if that is the case, how big of a challenge is it that understanding is low and more training is needed?
It's kind of interesting because you kind of look at it, and I think I agree with what everyone said so far, that the pace of change is going to be a lot quicker than people realize. But it almost feels very much like that we're very much at the start of that. So you can see around the statistics that, you know, people don't feel like the training's in place. They don't know whether the leaders kind of are ready for this transformation. And I think there's also a statistic about leaders understanding what AI actually is. And I think in APAC, it's very, very low. And so I think all of these combinations suggest that actually we're almost at the start of that process of kind of understanding it and understanding how it's going to disrupt the industry and how it's going to be applicable. I think how quickly we can then get up to speed, how quickly can we be ready, especially as leaders, wanting to adopt and help junior staff to kind of learn about this stuff. But also, I think, you know, we're going to have to go on a very quick learning journey in order to understand this transformation. I think that's going to be the big question of the next 6 months, because, you know, if I'm talking at the same level in 6 months' time, then that's going to be really worrying for like practitioners within sort of the kind of landscape. I would say, though, that what's kind of also very, very interesting is we're also almost at the start of how to apply it. I think, as Puneet said, we could be looking at press releases taking 3 minutes to be written, and we don't need to be written from our side. But at the same time, I was thinking about the actual optimistic side, which is, does this free us up as practitioners to deliver better campaigns? Can we have more impact for a client where we're actually, say, if we have a healthcare client, can we actually deliver something that fundamentally shifts the thinking around particular diseases? So I think there's sort of almost, you're removing some of the pain points that we have as on the agency side and potentially freeing us up to actually create more impact for our clients in the future. So for me, I think there's an element of optimism there that I kind of goes with that 86% that feel like there's an opportunity, but the opportunity is only going to be an opportunity if we're ahead of the game when it comes to our understanding of what it can do.
And no doubt there are implications, which we will discuss in terms of how roles will change. Before that, though, I wanted to just cite another set of statistics from the data. More than half of the respondents think industry leaders need to move faster to capitalize on opportunities. But they also think industry leaders must move faster to manage risks, and that they are not taking the risks seriously enough. And again, just mentioning the letter that came out yesterday, just calling for a 6-month pause at the same time that we have all of the respondents to this survey, more than 400 of them in the comms industry, that are actually calling for faster movement. Carolyn, how do you reconcile these views, perhaps, given that people are, they want the industry to move more quickly to capitalize on opportunities and manage risks, but they also think that the risks are not being taken seriously enough?
I think it's really difficult. I mean, I think, as Mark says, we're at the very beginnings of all of this. And, like any great innovation breakthrough, you have to navigate between allowing that innovation to advance and being able to put some parameters around it so that you're not creating problems or dangers for society. I think the regulators are having a really tough time of this because it's all happening so fast, and those capabilities don't really exist. I mean, interestingly, you talk about skills, and yes, of course, we have, mathematicians and computer sciences on the books, but we very deliberately hired skills in that are very diverse in our R&D team because there simply aren't AI trained people out in the workplace, certainly here in the UK. So we've got medieval historian and a theoretical linguist and a biologist and a teacher and, of course, mathematicians. The regulatory environment just doesn't have the capabilities, the capacities to I think, respond to all of this in the real time at which this is advancing. There is also a risk, of course, that fear creates unnecessary barriers that mean that all the things we've talked about in terms of how do we take advantage of these innovations cannot be realized. And we, better than anybody, understand that there are bad actors out there, and those bad actors are already starting to take advantage of these new tools. I mean, we've seen, even in the short space since January, that the complexity of phishing emails is dramatically boosted. The language structure is much more sophisticated. The use of blunt instruments like links and attachments is reduced because the capabilities of generative AI mean that you can create these highly personalized, highly targeted email phishing attempts at scale. You can generate them at scale, and even if your success rate isn't high, the ability to kind of push them out, get them into the world, is much enhanced. So absolutely, those risks exist, and I think our view on that is you can only fight AI generated cyber breaches with AI generated defense mechanisms, which is something we've been working on for the last 10 years. So it's a really interesting inflection point, and I don't know that you can put the genie back in the box. I mean, I don't know what society is going to fix in 6 months that is necessarily going to make all of this easier to manage. So I'm happy I'm not a regulator right now, because I think it's a very tough spot to be. I'm not sure that you can regulate the AI itself. I think you need to regulate the application of that AI, and the application of that AI will effectively be through the industries that are consuming it and using it and applying it to its workforce. So, I don't have a great answer on this at the moment, but I think the fine line that needs to be balanced is how does society gain from the extraordinary advances that we stand at inflection point in terms of productivity. We struggle to recruit the talented people we need into the workforce because there simply aren't enough of them. So, and I think that is, the sort of labor shortages, the sort of skills challenge is pretty much an industry-wide thing. There is great opportunity in being able to take these tools to do some of that lower level work so that you are raising the human up, that the human can start, can continue to focus on that high end world. I'm very optimistic about the communications landscape. I think it's unnecessary fear mongering that our jobs are going to be taken away. I think the advisory capability, the ability to run campaigns. These tools are brilliant to create more content, better content, augment all of that communications capability. I don't think that my CEO is going to take advice from an AI-generated chatbot just yet.
Well, I hope not. But yeah, like you said, no easy answers, but a lot of issues and factors that you've raised that I think all have to be considered. Let's talk about roles and jobs. So if we look at the impact on roles today, writing articles and social media creation rank highly for current use. But when it comes to future use, other areas appear more popular: data analysis, data visualization, desktop research, and also some very interesting results in terms of how AI will change the skills required of comms leaders. And Carolyn, you referenced that to a certain extent as well, in terms of the so-called soft skills. Leadership management become more important, strategic advisory, creative thinking, relationship building, verbal comms. Puneet, I wanted to come to you. How do you see roles changing as a result of these advances in generative AI?
I think I'd like to pick up where Carolyn ended around, just the fear around what it means for roles. And I want to combine the question that you just asked with your previous one around risk. Because the risk is around, does a role become redundant? Do people say you don't need so many more people in your team? You don't need agencies? Do the budgets dry up? Those are the questions every leader's asking, right? And I think we should all, at least I would want to do this, take a step back and kind of look at it from two lenses. And there are two aspects to generative. So the key thing is the generative AI capabilities. AI has been around for a while now. It's the generative progress that we've seen in the last few months that's got everyone interested. There are two aspects to it. There's one aspect that I think as communication professionals we have complete control over. And there's one aspect that we actually don't have control over, but we need to stay ahead of the game and be prepared, because that's where our roles will become even more. So if you give me a minute or two to explain. So the first part, the stuff that you talked about, Arun, content that we create, press releases that we write, op-eds that we write. I think all the people on the webinar are comms people, so I don't know. I don't have to belabor everything that we do from a content side. The generative AI tools can do that, and can do that even today to a very, very good quality in much less time than any of us can, no matter how good a writer any of us is, right? But let's not forget, what is generative AI? It is a large language model, right? Unlike Caroline and Darktrace's technology, which is an empty box, Cisco does something very similar as well with our cybersecurity engines. These are not empty engines. The reason they can write so well is because someone is sitting there ingesting millions and millions and millions of pages of text and teaching them language models, teaching them how language is written, giving them history, giving them context, giving them different perspectives through different books, different write-ups. We can do the same, maybe not millions. It will bring back, the way to fight this is, I was actually talking to someone who said something really brilliant today. This is our head of India business. And she said, AI will bring back the age of the intellectual, because original creative thinking will be needed. And because AI engines can do that job, people will be forced to read more, research more, learn more, and have their own original thinking. So that's the risk, but there is an equal amount of opportunity that we need to go back to things we used to do, which many of us have stopped doing because you kind of become good at your job and you think, well, I already know it, so I don't need to read the next book, right? So that's the first part. The second, so that will free up the time. It will give you time to build your skill set again. Those skills are then needed to the other risk that it presents. And that's the ability to generate content and things that are factually incorrect about you, about your brand, deep fakes about the brand, about the executives. We will see an absolute spike in the kind of crises that comms teams across the world are going to have to deal with, because things get written, things get published. Already everyone's a journalist, everyone's a publisher today. Now multiply that by N, factor of N. because now everyone has the ability to publish, but not everyone is a good writer. Now you have the ability and you have the engines to make you into a good writer. So you have to be on top of the game, ahead of the game, to understand what's coming your way. And a large chunk of the time that gets freed up because an engine can do your basic work is going to go towards creative thinking. As Mark said, how can you deliver that impactful campaign and use those? And part of that time is going to go towards an increase in fighting crisis. So jobs aren't going to go away. Our roles are going to significantly change.
So I guess the next question would be, and Mark, I'll address this to you, but Prashant, I'd like to hear your views as well as someone who's kind of adjacent to the agency business. For the agency business, which, yes, you know, the idea that this will focus more attention on strategy and creativity, and that's encouraging and that's an opportunity. But you know, you could take the view that the agency world has built its business on execution. And I wonder how big a risk it becomes, particularly if some of these tasks and some of these roles do become redundant. So, Mark, your thoughts on that? You're on mute.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think it's really an interesting point because I do think it will shift. Whether I think it will shift straight away, say a client doing their own press release, whether the actual lead time and actually developing kind of content is the first thing to start shrinking, or what used to take 2 days. I know you can use this platform to kind of shrink that down. So can you deliver it to me by this point? So I don't know whether, or I don't believe clients will suddenly kind of walk away from that. However, I do think in the sort of medium term, there will be that shift. But I think it will just mean what's going to be needed moving forward is a discussion between both agency and client about what now is the expectation around delivery. As it was said, that crisis is a hugely important part of what agencies do for their clients. Putting together a crisis plan, putting a team in place, if that becomes more of your bread and butter, then through procurement, through the discussions with clients, you then have to shift the nature of the model of how and what you're expected to deliver for them. I still believe, though, on the creative side and things like that, you're still going to be asked to come up with creative ideas. You're still going to have to put that strategy in place. There are still going to have to be people running the process with AI, the human behind this. So plugging in the information and kind of extracting. So I still think there's actually going to be a model which is about sort of execution, but what that execution actually means is going to shift. So actually, I think almost what you can imagine is there's going to be some teething problems between sort of where a client is, where an agency is, and then where the deliverables are, and like how we actually come together and work that out as we're trying to learn about this new technology at the same time. I think that's going to be the fascinating process, and also the process that a lot of us within the industry are going to have to grapple with.
I think Mark is on point. I would add a few things to it. So I was at the latest, in Singapore, we have this exhibition going on of the artist Van Gogh. And so there's this immersive museum there. It's kind of like metaverse. And towards the end, there's a quote that flashes in, and it says that you have to experience first what you want to express. You have to experience first what you want to express. And I think that's going to be quite important as we look at agency clients and consumers relationships, because we need to have a think through of what is it that we are expressing for our clients' behalf to the audiences. So it's going to be audience first approach. So let's say agency is working for a client who might be a B2B client or a B2C client. You need to look at who are the client's audiences and what is it that your KPI is from a client side on what the client wants to express. So you start with the audience first approach, which leads into what kind of messaging and what kind of mediums will go through to create that campaign or create that plan. And this is where generative AI will come in, because messages can be faster. They can have different kinds of tonality. Mediums can also be decoded because you can understand the different archetypes of mediums. For example, Twitter is all about, let's say, fun or fact checking versus Facebook versus Instagram versus news media, CNN versus Fox. So if you can understand the various tones at which media talks about, and you can tailor your messages as per the audience, then that part is the heavy lifting that generative AI can do. So then it boils down to how well do you understand your client's business as an agency and what your client is trying to do, because they're also grappling with the whole generative AI landscape. So ultimately, it's all about taking a step back, doing a lot of thinking, as Puneet mentioned, not being lazy about things in terms of, okay, I'm just gonna spend 30 seconds of my day to write a PR release, and then I'm gonna just chill the whole day. It's gonna be about the thinking of 7 hours that you have to go through and do interdisciplinary stuff before you generate the right prompt for that 30-second of PR release. There's gonna be a sort of diminishing line between synthetic and authentic content. Synthetic content is the generative AI content, and authentic being what we write. And there's no way, unless the cryptography and Web3 comes in, to decode what is synthetic and what is authentic. You might have seen pictures on LinkedIn and Twitter, all those polls that, hey, which picture is AI generated? And that poll is just going to get more messier as more models come through. So it will boil down to going back to the basics of how well do we understand our client's business and ultimately their audience.
Mm. And you also refer to the questions around ownership and disclosure that were also revealed in the survey. Puneet, I'll come to you first, and then Carolyn, you next. You both have your virtual hands raised.
I know, you should tell we are absolute expert at using collaboration tools. Hey, I just add to what Mark said and Prashant kind of added to. I think it sometimes gets taken for granted, but I do think we should remember that the success of communications teams has always hinged on the partnership between agency and in-house. If you look at as a client and agency, and I'm paying you money, so you do me X, it's never succeeded, right? The best results are driven where it's an actual partnership. And in this generative AI-driven world where it's kind of becoming clear which tasks get automated and what can get done how quickly, that would be even more critical. The ability to work with partners externally and sit down as an extended team and say, all right, here is the budget we spend with you, or here's the budget we have. What gets automated so we can still get the same things done, and we can get them done quickly, more effectively, more efficiently, and we can free up that money so you can take it, as Mark said, and what can we deliver more now that we've got that budget freed up? Because the media monitoring, for example, that was taking you 4 hours a day to put together is now taking you 20 minutes. So you've freed up 3 hours and 40 minutes of an junior executive's time. Where can we put that money to, right? And that discussion can only happen if you see your agency as a partner, not as we pay you money and you got to do this for us. Because ultimately for in-house teams also, last thing, Carolyn, I'm going to pass to you very quickly. For in-house team also, and I hope Carolyn agrees with me, the time when you could sit as a comms professional and tell your executive, my job was to generate share of voice and I've done that. And beyond that, the business impact is not something that you should measure PR on. It's kind of going away. You need to work with your execs and you need to show the impact you are having beyond just the fantastic headline you generated on Bloomberg.
So yeah, I mean, I was going to say something very similar to Puneet. I have really no problem with agencies using these new tools if it's going to boost productivity, if it's going to enhance outcomes, if it's going to drive more success. I mean, frankly, what is in your toolkit and how you capitalize on that toolkit, I'm cool. Like whatever you need to do to be able to drive those outcomes, I'm really good with that. And I'm not going to reduce your fee because suddenly the press release is being written by Gen AI. If you send me a press release that you've only generated by Gen AI and you haven't gone through the process of reviewing it and making sure that it reflects the message that we're trying to communicate and that it's audience first, as Prashant says, then maybe I'll think about a fee reduction. But if it's taking you 20 minutes and you've got gained that 3 hours and 40 minutes back, that was for media monitoring, and you're putting that thinking time into the next campaign or generating a piece of research, you know, all that sort of age of the intellectual stuff that we were talking about, really thinking about how you drive a sort of 360 campaign and that addresses your audiences. I am so up for that. I have no problem with that. So, you know, I feel like this is another terrific tool in the toolkit, not something that needs to be feared. The one thing I would say, though, is I think as an industry, we need to think about what we do with the sort of the workforce who's coming through the system, and particularly at the very early stages of people's careers. I mean, I remember I started my career at Brunswick a very long time ago because I'm now very old, but I literally sat in the basement of the Brunswick building for 6 months and I wrote press reviews and I did media summaries, and it was really boring and no one ever explained to me what the purpose of my work was. I just kind of bashed them out. Now that is presumably going to be done by a machine. So what do you do with that young person to help them understand the inherent skills that sit behind that interpretation, analysis, synopsis, all those skill sets, if they're not doing the sort of hands-on work? I don't have a great answer to that, but I do think that that's something that we as more experienced professionals need to think about, because you're only going to move up that value chain into that advisory role when you have all of these building blocks in place. And I'm probably not giving credit to the younger generation. I see my 13-year-old deal with technology and it's just in a different stratosphere to me. So I suspect this will work its way through the system anyway, but I think it's something we need to bear in mind and be thoughtful about as we continue to build our teams.
Yeah, and it just reminds me that, you know, if nothing else, these are the issues on which, you know, comms council, agency, consultancies are there to advise on. And it also kind of just reminds us, I think, that the issues that you've all raised here that have been highlighted by Gen AI are issues that have existed for much longer. You know, what is the agency-client relationship? Is it a partnership? Is it customer-vendor? And how important is change management, for example, when it comes to managing technological innovation? So we've got just over 10 minutes left. Please do send any questions you have in. I'm going to take...
Hey, Arun, as you read the question, just one very
Sure.
quickly to Carolyn's point, right? What do we do with the junior? And you mentioned about skill sets. I think as industry leaders, we need to look outside of our own bubble and look at industries that have actually had to deal with this over the last 5 years. I remember when I was at the agency side, and I think I mentioned it to Kelly some time ago, we used to have a law firm as a client. And the managing partner of the law firm had told me at that point, and this is like 6-7 years ago, that their big clients, think like JP Morgans and Nomura's of the world, had actually told them that we have you on retainer, but I do not want to see in your monthly bill any junior associate's time. I'm going to pay you for partner time because your junior associate is only going through a contract, is only doing NDAs, and the AI-powered engines were good enough to do that at that time. They had stopped paying them for associate time. And maybe it is on us to kind of look into our circles, professional circles, and get those people in to talk to us. Say, how are you dealing? Because you can still get away with not knowing how to write a press release and still be a good communicator. But think about not knowing how to write an NDA and becoming a partner at a law firm. Just unthinkable, unfathomable. We should look at those things and get those people in to talk to us.
Yeah, much to learn, I think, no doubt, from other sectors. Yeah, I actually see a similar challenge because in the same way that much of the PR industry has kind of ended up being built around, in some cases, commoditized execution, I think that too much of the journalism world has ended up being built around journalism and kind of easily created news stories. And that the high value journalism is probably not being practiced enough. So it actually requires, if you take the view that AI is going to replace that kind of news work, then it does require quite a big shift in terms of how the journalism world operates. But that's perhaps a discussion for another time because we are out of time. So thank you First of all, thanks to all of our attendees for tuning in. I hope you found this as illuminating and thought-provoking and as fascinating as I did. We tried to get to as many of your questions as possible. We will try and answer them all. Any remaining ones after the session, we'll be sharing video and report in a few days. And most importantly, thank you so much to my incredible panelists, Puneet, Prashant, Mark, and Carolyn. A wonderful conversation. I think we could have gone on, and maybe we will at another date. But thank you all and take care.
Thanks. Bye.